Good evening. I, Prajakta Adhikari, on behalf of the Institute of Environmental Architecture and Research, warmly welcomes all our participants and our panelists for today. The Institute of Environmental Architecture and Research, IEAR, which is a Mumbai-based educational, research and training institute with a vision to create a sustainable environment through scientific research, education and training, socio-cultural understanding, community engagement, and awareness. We are a multidisciplinary group of scientists, professionals, and academicians who have joined forces to form this organization, having worked collaboratively for more than 15 years on education, environment consultancy, and awareness. Our mission is Environment First. This is the 20th webinar in the series, which we started during the lockdown period. So far, we have reached out to more than 4,500 participants altogether. Our main objective in this webinar series is to provide educational and research inputs and a scientific and analytical approach to environmental issues. Today's program has been conducted on the eve of Earth Day that happened to be on 22nd April. I would now like to introduce our panelists for the day. Our first panelist, Mr. Anand Hure, is a management level professional in procurement and supply chain management, specializing in materials planning and procurement in engineering industries, especially automotive and automotive ancillaries. With over 18 years of professional experience in reputed multinational organizations from Godrej to Haiwa. He returned back to his native place, Malvan, Sindhudurg in 2019 and founded ecotourism company Malvan Boating Club. He is involved in environmental activities such as case against illegal fishing with HRC Mumbai, scheme of Kisan credit card for fishermen, mangrove eco safari, uh, electric boat, the first ever electric boat of Maharashtra government in Vengurla Creek, Tortoise Maternity Home at Vayangani, follow-up with MPCB to implement EPR to curb plastic pollution, a pilot project of making organic fertilizer from agro waste and fish waste, unique waterfront eco motels at Malvan, coastal circuit at Sindhudurg, which is a central government tourism project, lighthouse tourism, coir factories were commissioned with follow-up with Mahacoir to create jobs for rural women. He is at present involved in using green CNG fuel alternative to fossil fuel for fishing boats and developing solar dryer using solar dryer instead of traditional over drying. Our next panelist is Professor Bhushan Bhoir. He is an assistant professor, Department of Zoology, Sonopan Dandekar College, Palghar. He is graduated in 2 streams of science, BSc Chemistry and Zoology. He has a master's degree in Zoology Oceanography from MD College, Mumbai. Apart from academics, he works to conserve nature, being his passion. He has been quite active in snake and animal rescue since past 10 years and has worked several times to mitigate human-leopard conflict with Forest Department. He is an expert in leopard camera trapping. He is currently working as NSS Program Officer since past 3 years with NSS unit of Sonopan Dandekar College. As a freelance writer, he has written several articles about marine ecology and pollution problems in Maharashtra Times, Tarun Bharat, Sakal, and Lok Satta. He is a former member of Palghar District Biodiversity and Wetland Committee. He believes in practical work and has taken training of natural building from the very famous Laurie Baker Center. In future, he plans to spread awareness about eco-living, that is with minimal needs in natural house and making own food by natural farming. Our next panelist is Mr. Avinash Kubal. He is the ex-deputy director of Maharashtra Nature Park Society, Dharavi. He was instrumental in developing a garbage dump into a thriving urban forest ecosystem in the heart of the Mumbai city. He has a master's degree in physics and bachelor's degree in forestry, wildlife management, and ecology. Mr. Kubal has worked as a government forest expert and specializes in nature education, ecological restoration, and water conservation. Our last finalist for today, Dr. Sadhna Mahashabde, is a practicing environmental lawyer with Bombay High Court. She has a PhD in environmental law from Bharati Vidyapit Deemed University, Pune. Her areas of specialization include environmental pollution, municipal solid waste management, coastal regulation zone, environmentally sensitive areas, National Green Tribunal, and environmental impact assessment. She has more than 20 years of experience as lawyer at Bombay High Court, particularly having spearheaded several public interest litigations for environmental preservation in and around Mumbai city, including Worli Bandra Sealing Project, Gorai Dumping Ground, Mathiran Environment Impact Assessment, and noise pollution in Mumbai. Now introducing our moderator for the event, Dr. Roshni Udyawar Yehuda. She is president of the Institute of Environmental Architecture and Research. She is a co-chair of the scientific committee for the International Symposium on Youth Leadership and Climate Action organized by Children Now Montreal, July 2021. She was the head of Rachna Sansad Institute of Environmental Architecture from June 2003 to July 2017, where she initiated and led several environmental projects, including the Savantwadi Ecotourism Project and Sundardurg Village Tourism Project in collaboration with Rural Development Department, Government of Maharashtra. She has many other projects. She's done many other projects like Dahisar River Restoration, Charlotte Lake Revitalization, Jesuri Lake Restoration, Indapur Township Water Planning, and Mankhut Slums Drainage Improvement Project, a national level annual rainwater harvesting competition, Harvest to Harness, the first of its kind, in collaboration with the Times Foundation, Eureka Forbes Institute of Environment, and Lotus Suits from 2004 to 2008. She is an advisor, Environment and Sustainability, Science and Technology Park, Pune, and principal investigator for the Department of Science and Technology, Government of India's research project on developing energy efficient and ECBC compliant opaque wall assembly. She has more than 20 years of academic and professional experience and has traveled widely on professional assignments to more than 20 countries. I would now welcome Dr. Roshni Yehuda, President, to introduce our today's webinar and take the event ahead. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Prajakta. Good evening and warm welcome to all our participants and also the panelists. Welcome to this webinar organized to observe the International Earth Day. We are doing this program in the backdrop of a very sad situation in our country related to the COVID-19 pandemic. Thousands of our fellow citizens are desperately asking for help for their relatives and friends, queuing outside hospitals, where of all things, oxygen is running out. Truly, we never imagined that we would come to this situation. But somewhere, each one of us is aware that this ghastly and hopeless situation has come about because of us, human beings, and what we have done to our environment. We have cut forests. Only yesterday, I was looking at a report which talked about, about 3.5 football fields being destroyed every minute in the Amazon forests. Can you imagine the rate at which we are destroying this amazing forest that we have? And it's happening in other places as well. We have destroyed wildlife, we have polluted rivers and oceans, and we have recklessly used up natural resources. And all this is coming back to us. Let us recognize this. Today we are observing Earth Day. Let me give you a brief background on what Earth Day is and why we celebrate it every year. Earth Day was first observed on 22nd April 1970 in the United States as a public awakening about the state of our planet Earth. Following the publication of Rachel Carson's book, The Silent Spring, in 1962, in which the marine biologists exposed the dangers of the rampant usage of DDT and other persistent organic chemicals on the food chain and its inextricable link to public health, there had begun a general concern over environmental pollution in the United States and of course in other parts of the world as well. But it was Senator Gaylord Nelson of the United States who, after there was a massive oil spill in Santa Barbara, California, and at the same time the student anti-war movement, he channelized this youth movement towards the increasing pollution of air, water, and land. And that was the beginning of the Earth Day. In fact, the first Earth Day inspired 20 million Americans. At that time, this was about 10% of the total population of the United States, to take to streets, parks, auditoriums to demonstrate against the impact of 150 years of industrial development, which had left a growing legacy of serious human health impacts. Thousands of colleges and universities organized protests against the deterioration of the environment, and there were rallies in every city, town, and community in the United States. In 2019, through a resolution adopted in the United Nations, the United Nations Environment Programme also declared 22 April as International Mother Earth Day. And the theme for this year, 2021, is Restore Our Earth. In view of the impending climate crisis that is looming upon us, we felt that it was relevant to discuss about one of the critical ecosystems, that is the oceans, the marine ecosystem, the fisheries, and very closely related to it, the fisher folk community. Before I proceed to my experts from the judiciary, from ecological experts, as well as we have activists, citizens who are on the panel today, I would like to give a few lines on the overall perspective of the challenges that we face. As you all know, India has a coastline of 7,500 kilometers and an exclusive economic zone of 2 million square kilometers. The Indian coastline, which consists of mudflats, sandy beaches, estuaries, seagrass beds, sandy and rocky beaches, extends up to 42,808 square kilometers and supports roughly about 20% of the Indian population. These coastal and marine ecosystems are highly productive and contribute to the food and nutritional security, as well as the socio-economic well-being of coastal communities, roughly about 6 million people, and accounts to about 1.07% of India's total GDP. These ecosystems, in addition, provide numerous ecosystem services such as carbon sequestration, protection from extreme weather events, and atmospheric and temperature regulation. Unfortunately, in the last few decades, these marine ecosystems have come under increasing pressure of developmental activities, especially infrastructure projects, illegal and overfishing, destruction and pollution of habitats, and also, of course, climate change. And despite having legislation such as CRZ to protect this vital ecosystem and also the fisher community's interests, the trend is unfortunately in the wrong direction. To understand this issue in a holistic perspective, I would like to first of all now invite our first panelist, Mr. Avinash Kubal, who will give us an overview of the impacts on the marine ecosystems at large. Avinash Kubal.
Thank you very much, Dr. Roshni, and good evening all the participants, all the panelists. The topic which we are discussing today is about the pressure which we are facing on our ecosystems, particularly the coastal ecosystem. As Dr. Roshni told about the marine wealth of India and Indian coasts, we are very well aware that out of those 5,200 kilometers of coastal ecosystem what we have in Mumbai, in Indian coast, Maharashtra is bestowed with 720 kilometers. If we take the impact zone of the coastal area, say from the zero line of the sea coast to 20 kilometers, we are impacted hugely in coastal Maharashtra. What we call it as a Konkan is actually the land between the Western Ghat, which is a mighty mountain range, and the sea coast, that is Arabian Sea. This is the impact. This is the area which we are going to discuss today, mainly because we are all from Mumbai and nearby areas. In this area, if we see, there is a rapid development of economical activity and, of course, population growth. Now, this area has big city like Mumbai and its surrounding cities like Thane and other places. Lot of industrial activity is taking place, particularly Mumbai and its northern zone. Similarly, the Konkan area, which once upon a time was very good agriculture as well as the fisheries zone, is also getting impacted because of lot of industrial activity and to some extent with the chemical zone, chemical industries, as well as a lot of other activities like port and other things. Now, in these areas, the impact is very high. If we take into consideration the entire coast of India, Konkan is the belt or Konkan is the area which is getting most badly impacted. We have a lot of activities coming up here, like in and around Mumbai area. We have a lot of sea link projects connecting one place to another through the ocean or through the sea. Similarly, we have a lot of jetty projects coming up in coastal parts like we have jetty coming up near Vadwan, for which Bhushan Bhoir is going to speak. We have jetties coming up in other parts of the Konkan about which Anand Hule is going to speak. These are the areas which are getting badly affected. We also have the issues related to transportation because when these jetties or new ports are getting constructed, they also need to have a lot of connectivity either through road transport or through rail transport. JNPT is a glaring example for this, where a huge port has come up within last 20 years and which has created a huge impact of traffic, road, rail network in and around Mumbai and surrounding areas. Similarly, the development of JNPT port has almost destroyed lot of area around Uran and those creeks, in which once upon a time there was a very good thriving marine ecosystem as well as lot of mangrove forest. Similar things are happening in a newly coming up project of Vadwan. Similar issues are getting discussed about lot of new ports which are coming up in the Konkan coast. We do have lot of uh, roads and road networks coming up in the name of coastal roads to build a good connectivity along with all the ports and the coastal towns. Now these coastal roads are also impacting our creeks on which there are massive bridges are built. All Many places these bridges are obstructing the flow of or channelizing the flow and creating impact. Similarly, a lot of industries which have come up in this coastal area, particularly in the zone of Palghar, entire belt of Mumbai and surroundings like Ulhasnagar, Ambernath, all those areas, Kalyan, and to some extent, like we can say about Navi Mumbai. We also have a lot of industrial activity coming up in Patalganga, which has polluted a river which once upon a time known as Dharamtar Creek. We have a lot of industrial areas which have come up in other coastal talukas of Puran and Alibag. Similarly, if we go little south, we have industrial zone which has come up in Mahad, and these are all industrial areas which are connected with the chemical industry, are creating problem not only on the water quality but also causing problems of siltation in the creek, destroying the mangrove forest in that area, impacting the fisheries and fish products and livelihood of the people living in that area. All these impacts are like very damaging and destroying for our day-to-day life of the people, those who are living in this coastal area. There are a lot of communities which are directly and indirectly connected with these issues. We have people connected with fisheries, we have people connected with coastal agriculture, we have people connected with coastal horticulture, And all these people, either they are losing their livelihood, they are losing their crop patterns, and such issues we need to discuss. We need to look at our future and consider that what best we can do for having a kind of system in which both the development as well as the ecological restorations can go hand in hand. And for that, we are discussing this issue today. We have good speakers and we are expecting a lot of questions from you about all these things. So with that, I stop here. I hand it over to the next speaker. Please take it over, Roshni.
Yes, before I go to Mr. Hule, who is our next panelist, I just wanted to also to highlight a little bit about climate change. You mentioned about a lot of projects that are coming up all along the Konkan region, especially. And I hope that Mr. Hule will give us some more insights into the Konkan. But what kind of issues are being seen as problems with respect to the climate change? Can you briefly highlight, or would you like to say that later?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. All these areas are because they are they are completely affected because of the human habitation. These areas are facing a lot of destruction, particularly in terms of vegetation and the loss of soil cover. This area is also getting impacted because of lot of animal loss, like all the small creatures which are living in the creek, taking care of the water, are getting lost. Also in this area, we are seeing that because of the climate change, the patterns of season are changing. Earlier, when the rainfall used to be very kind of regular rainfall with good amount of rainfall spread over a lot of large area of monsoon, is now shrinking to certain number of days on which there is a heavy downpour, heavy rains, and this is causing lot of damage to the soil cover, because when there is a heavy rain, of course there are floods and there is lot of soil erosion. Similarly, on the dry days in between the monsoon, we see lot of casualty or mortality of saplings which are germinated, or the grasses which are germinated, they are dying. And when these kind of death is happening, these plants are getting replaced by a lot of invasive species. So what we have seen in the entire coastal area of Maharashtra is a lot of invasive weeds which have come up, which are causing impact on the local biota, the local species of insect, grazing animals, as well as local microfauna. So this kind of impact is there. Besides that, in many areas, we have seen there is a lot of erosion taking place. Many of these areas you will find there are tetrapods or similar kind of engineering solutions are being provided. You can see them in the Mumbai coast, as well as in several places in Konkan. You see large tetrapods or stones are being used for preventing this marine erosion. At many places, we have seen that there is a lot of deposition is also happening. Like if we see in the Thane Creek, which never had the so-called the beautiful birds like flamingo, is now completely getting covered with lot of flamingos coming in, which is an impact of a climate change and the soil deposition, because these creeks which were not deep are now getting shallower and getting filled up with lot of muddy areas, and these muddy areas being a fertile ground for flamingos, a lot of flamingos have started thronging around the entire Thane Creek, as well as they are also spreading on the western coast of Mumbai. And this is an impact which in future is going to create some different kind of issue related to coastal vegetation. Now, these kind of things are going to happen, going to take place. Some places we have seen a lot of damage for the mangrove ecosystems. At the same time, in certain places, we have seen mangroves are thriving or thriving very high because of the impact of lot of minerals coming because of the human activities or the anthropological activities. Now, this kind of impact is creating lot of changes in the coastal ecology and on the livelihood of the people. These are some of the issues. Of course, so far so we have not faced much issues related to the ocean rise or the sea rise, but I think days are not far that we may face this problem as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I think that very true. I mean, we have seen that the intensity of rainfall nowadays, in few days, then we get very intense rains in which there is flooding, and in Mumbai, of course, it causes a lot of havoc, but also in the rural areas. And otherwise, you've also seen unseasonal rainfall. And I think that later on, probably we can discuss about something like climate resilient maybe fisheries and agriculture systems. I can already see there are questions coming in, but I will probably take them later. And since you have started with the Konkan aspect about Konkan, our next speaker is spot on this subject because he has worked intensively in the Konkan region on various issues from illegal fishing to plastic pollution to CRZ related issues and sustainable fishing. So I would now invite Mr. Anand Hule. Please, if you can give us an introduction of all of these aspects that you have been working on, and also probably give us some idea about what your team or your organization or your groups are trying to achieve in these places.
Thank you. I start.
Yes, please.
My sound is clear now?
Yes.
Because I am sitting on just 20 meters from seashore in front of Sindhudurga Fort. So that's I am asking. Let us start. I am Anand Hule from Malwan, Sindhudurga. I am from fisherman community, and I have come as a representative of a coastal community. So people have one understanding that all these fishermen, all this coastal community, they are always opposing development project. So it is not true. If I see the Sindhudurga, India's first tourism jetty from Sagarmala project was implemented in Malwan. We support that. NABARD's fisherman jetty at Venkurla, 35 crore. We have helped government authority. First fishing jetty Devgarh, cost is 250 crore. We have supported it. Lighthouse tourism at Venkurla Lighthouse, we supported all the CRZ survey. Tourism submarine, we have helped government. So we never oppose any development project. Only we have demanded that our coastal area should not be hampered due to development. So again, I'm starting that we never oppose development. I will I will present my view by PPT.
I think you can press F5. Huh?
F5, no?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Done.
So this is my introduction. First, my point is I'm taking 4 points. First, I'm going to the very hot issue, that is illegal fishing. The pictorial view itself is explanatory what I mean by illegal fishing. So LED, that is light emission or pursuit fishing, in which juvenile fish or eggs or fish are destroyed, has been defined as illegal fishing by central and state government. Both central government of India and government of Maharashtra has banned LED personate fishing. There are a number of notifications, GR and circular, and all this illegal fishing has been banned from last 5 years. Some very landmark judgments are issued by different court, that is Supreme Court, High Court, National Green Tribunal. Due to some time limitation, I cannot give all the writ petition number or citation, but just I will explain that. The Supreme Court has mentioned that personate fishing is an illegal fishing and to be banned. National Tribunal has also stamped that personate fishing is illegal fishing, and Bombay High Court before 5 years has also directed that personate is illegal fishing while giving interim order to stop personate fishing. So what is personate fishing? In personate fishing, see the net is of small hole. Because of this small hole, all the juvenile fish or egg are caught in the fishing net, and all the marine ecosystem has been destroyed. So despite banning the illegal fishing or LED fishing, still this all type of illegal fishing is still going on the coastal of India, all over India, that is from Kerala to Gujarat. The fish point of Kerala and Gujarat has been totally spoiled, and now that's why they are coming on the coastal coast, because somehow it is remained because of traditional fishermen initiative. So why this ban has not been implemented? That is failure of implementation. Both Maharashtra state and central government of India are pointing each other on boundary issue. You know that 12 nautical mile is the boundary of Maharashtra, and beyond 12 nautical mile to 35 nautical mile is a boundary of Indian government, that is Coast Guard. So when there is illegal fishing going on, Maharashtra government said that it is not our boundary, it is Coast Guard boundary, and Coast Guard said it is not our boundary, it is government of Maharashtra boundary. So both point each other, and no action is taken on violation of this illegal fishing. And even if in deep sea fishing, very heavy illegal fishing LED percentage is going on, but the Coast Guard never take any action. Point number 2, MCS, that is monitoring and surveillance. It is supposed to be formed in the year 2016, that is before 5 years, but due to non-availability of fund, it is not formed. So at present, Fishery Department of Maharashtra don't have manpower, don't have infrastructure like speedboat, patrolling boat like that. And third point is that heavy corruption in Fisheries and Revenue Department. That now openly I'm saying that alleging that this government officer, corrupt government officer from fisheries are taking bribe from fishermen, fishing mafia from Goa, Karnataka, and they don't take action, giving some excuses. And if you suppose they caught in the court, that is a Tahsildar court or collector court, they take again bribe from this mafia, and without taking action, they leave it. So the corruption is a big issue. What is the impact of illegal fishing? You can see that one rare fish, it is called sawfish. All this type of protected fish, sawfish, dolphin fish, or tortoise are caught in the illegal fishing. So from last 10 years, due to illegal fishing, there is a heavy fish scarcity. In Hindi or Marathi, it is called Matsya Dushkal, has happened due to illegal fishing. The condition is worst in Kerala, Karnataka, and Tamil Nadu due to this type of monster fishing. And second thing, I explained that rare and protected marine species that we in ourselves called as the biodiversity are destroyed due to illegal fishing. And taking this cognizance, USA has banned shrimp export from India and claiming that while catching the shrimp, they are destroying the biodiversity of ocean. Now, what is the solution? That this is the picture relief of government of Odisha speedboat. So the only is both state government and government of India, Maharashtra government should protect, do the joint patrolling and take action on this fishing mafia. So my first point, I have concluded that there is illegal fishing going on all over India, Maharashtra, and due to government apathy, there is no action taken on. So I'm going to the second point, that is plastic pollution. Now, not only India, but all over the world, this plastic pollution has become a global threat to marine ecology and fishing industry. I remember in my front when the fishing was going on. Nowadays, fishermen are getting more plastic than fish product. And from newspaper, you can read that the condition is worse than developed countries like US and Europe. Even the developed countries like Thailand and Caribbean, they are dumped with all this plastic kachara due to tourist activities. Now, this is a picture of one Sweden. So, in the creek or in the river, they are collecting all this plastic bottle and they are giving some money to the tourists for collecting plastic bottle. So, what is the root cause of plastic waste? That plastic has proved as a low-cost packaging material, and in order to supply product in competitive price, plastic is widely used in industry. If you remember, before 10 years, if you want to drink Pepsi, Coca-Cola, Sprite, there was a refilling glass bottle. But nowadays, 95% cold drink are distributed with PET bottle, and it lead to plastic waste. Now, what is the solution? That government of India has come with a very fantastic law, that is EPR. What is EPR? EPR stands for Extended Producer Responsibility. That is, the brand owner, importer, producer, manufacturer like Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Bisleri are responsible for treatment and disposal of their post-consumer product. Means they are required to maintain proper EPR action plan to collect back the plastic waste generated due to their product. And second point is that MLP waste, that is multi-layer plastic waste. And I explained that the plastic waste management PWM rules, which was passed before something 5 years back, making mandate to phase out the non-plastic in 2 years. So far, it has not happened, and because we don't bother about nature, and in the following years, it was supposed to be banned, but it has so far not been implemented. Now, again, what is EPR law? All the bulk producer, packaging, brand owner must meet their market target by channeling the plastic waste, recyclable or non-recyclable plasticware, and are responsible for recycling it, which means that all the generated waste is recycled under condition that display no harm to the environment. And now it is now liability of manufacturer and seller of plastic product to collect the waste generated from their production. For example, brand owners are liable for the brand packaging, collection and recycling of packets, plastic packaging which contain the brand name. This is a great step toward decreasing the amount of waste generated, as the company have started switching plastic with paper or recyclable non-material, so that possible to replace non-recyclable waste with bioplastic can be. Coca-Cola is a live example that before 3 months they are announced that they are going for this can instead of plastic bottle. This is a picture of Pune Municipal. They have installed a machine that you drop a PET machine and you will get one coupon, and from coupon you will get some concession in the property tax. Now, this EPR law is so far not been finalized by Government of India because there is some litigation going on, and in National Green Tribunal has summoned to the central government, to the pollution board, to finalize EPR law, and all the single-use plastic making industry should be covered under EPR. So, in the last hearing, it was happened that the bench of NGT has said that even the plastic pen, plastic toothbrush, plastic jhadu, it should also come in the EPR law. And the case is going on that they said that within a few months you have to finalize this EPR law. Why EPR law has failed? Because it has started in the 2016, but it is not been finalized. Because in Maharashtra, this plastic ban, the law is made by pollution board, but it is badly followed by urban department or Panchayati Raj. I explained what. See, there is a ban on carry bag, but who is supposed to monitor? It is supposed to be monitored by Mumbai municipality, license department. But they don't have manpower, they don't have legal department, and there is no penalty who is using carry bag or plastic material. So this law is only on paper, nothing is implemented. Point number 2 is National Green Tribunal has penalized big industries like Coke, PepsiCo, Bisleri, Patanjali over non-disposal of single-use, but the penalty is minor. Suppose I am a Coca-Cola president, I say that I can save 5 rupees by a plastic bottle, but the penalty is only 2 rupees. So I will continue with this is the mentality of our industry. Now coming to the next point, that is ocean pollution, that is ghost net. This ghost net means this fishing net, when it get damaged, the fishermen throw away on the beach or in the sea, and this ghost net is a major cause of death to the marine life. Fishing net are this fishermen thrown on the beach and seas, which become threat to the marine life. Now, Maharashtra government has taken some good point that coastal community is getting compensation if their net is damaged while rescuing protected marine species. They are getting some 10,000 or 25,000 if the net is damaged while rescuing. And we ourselves in Malwan, Sindhudurga, we have requested forest department that you supply us your scuba land facility so that we can clear all this ghost net trash in the sea. Now, plastic waste is categorized into 2 parts: cyclable plastic and recyclable plastic. Non-recyclable means like wrapper, milk pouch, and that. And our Bombay High Court has ordered to use this non-recyclable plastic in road construction, and Indian Road Congress is supposed to monitor this activity. Unfortunately, as usual, these guidelines are not followed by Public Works Department, Government of Maharashtra. The only solution of plastic threat is effective implementation EPR, monitoring of EPR, plastic ban to be effective implemented by civil body, that is municipality, council or panchayat, and non-recyclable plastic to be used in road construction. So this second point I have covered, that is a plastic issue. I'm coming to the third point, that is violation of CRZ MCZA. This photograph is from my village, that is Malwan Devbag. And you can see one resort is built on the beach of this sea. And you can see one swimming pool is built even at a highlight level. You know, this CRZ has been modified in the year 2019. Previously, the limit was 500 meter. Government has reduced from 500 to 50 meter, and in village, that limitation has come to the 200 meter. But you can see this type of construction, that is hotel industry. Lot of illegal construction has happened on the coast of Maharashtra, and no action has been taken year and year. Now, CRZ rules and regulation. First of all, illegal construction is a threat to the coastal area. As per this CRZ modification, the limit has changed from 50 meter in the city and in the rural area it is 200 meter. Previously it was 500 meter. Now who is supposed to take action? See, from last 1.5 years, I am doing follow-up in Malvan Municipal Council. I explained that Malvan Municipality, Revenue Department, that is Tahsildar, Maritime Board, Police, all they saying that it is not our responsibility to take action on illegal construction. So I observed that this officer, even the IS and IPS officer, are not aware of all these rules, who is supposed to take action. So first of all, in the city like Mumbai, Alibag, the chief officer or assistant commissioner is supposed to take action on illegal construction in CRZ area. And in village like Malvan, Ratnagiri, the Prant, that is the revenue department, is a competent officer to take action on legal in the CRZ area. Now, there is a rule that in the CRZ committee, there is a representative to the fisherman or coastal community. Unfortunately, in our Sindhudurga also, there are 3 representatives, one from Vengurla, one from Malvan, and one from Devgarh. But unfortunately, the meeting never happened, and there is no weightage to the coastal community. So all these CRZ rules and regulations is only on the paper, they are not implemented. Now, this illegal construction are mainly due to illegal tourist cottage and resort photo I have shown you. In Alibag, all these villa in no development zone are mostly constructed by rich people like Nirav Modi and all that. Now in village, the Gram Sevak of Gram Panchayat is supposed to take action and inform Pran to take action on illegal construction. And in urban like Mumbai or Alibag, the building department are supposed to raise illegal construction. Some landmark court, I can say that the Supreme Court has directed to raise 7-star hotels in Kerala, which come in the CRZ no development zone. The High Court of Bombay had directed to raise illegal villas of heavyweight person like Nirav Modi in Alibag, which has come in the CRZ no development zone. Last week, Goa, that is CGADMA, has penalized 5 lakh for a illegal construction in government CRZ area. So why there is a failure in taking action on illegal construction in CRZ or no development zone? That I explained that Revenue Department, Maritime Board, Municipality Council, Police are finger each other on illegal construction removal. Nobody take action. And as per rule, FIR, that is a 3 years jail, is not registered in illegal construction, and the action is not taken under Anti-Corruption Act against the government servant who protect illegal construction. So third point I covered that illegal construction in CRZ area. Now coming to the last point, that is eco-labeling. So eco-labeling is just like a certification body. In vegetable, there is a certification body called organic food. There is a body, certification body, who certified what is the organic food. Like fish industry, there is a eco-labeling facility. So first of all, what is meant by eco-labeling? So eco-labeling is a certification body which certified that only full growth fish food is caught by sustainable fishing by traditional fishermen. In India, only Kerala is the state where they got a eco-labeling certificate. In Kerala, shellfish grower fisherman society has received this type of certificate, that is eco-labeling certificate. And India, the government body which is located at Warsaw, CMFRI, is a certification body for eco-labeling. What are the benefits of eco-labeling? The European community has offered handsome price to the fish food grown by eco-labeling certification in order to encourage this marine biosystem. And due to eco-labeling, this marine ecosystem is protected. So all the 4 points I have covered. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Hule, for giving us such a nice overview of what is happening. First of all, we envy you sitting in front of the ocean and in Malvan, whereas we are all stuck in our homes. So you're really lucky that way. And the points that you have presented are really very, very significant, especially the one on illegal fishing, the pursue net that you talked about, and all the laws that are being violated. So that's a very important point, and that is, one of our next speakers. I will ask, I think we can ask her these questions. And there are some questions also, of course, being asked by the participants, which we will go through towards the end. But taking it further, I think I will go to our next panelist, that is Dr. Sadhna Mahashabde. So Sadhna, legislations such as CRZ and EIA and many others, including EPR that Anand Hule talked about, they are meant for protection of the environment. And in many of the projects, such as in the coastline, not just about the illegal fishing, but also about the jetties and ports, we have seen there are lots of agitations and protests against the projects in the local communities. So how effective or how successful has this mechanism been of protecting the environment by law? I would request you to kindly highlight and give us some few actual cases or something.
Thank you, Roshni. And even thank you to Hule sir. He gave us a very good overview about environmental law and role of environmental law in protecting marine ecosystem. So in that respect, Hule sir highlighted several illegal constructions and implementation where we failed. So with that respect, I would like to give a few of the cases. First of all, I would like to introduce about the legislation available. So when we are talking about today's subject of protecting coastal area, so with that respect, we are supposed to protect the ocean, oil spill cases, and when we are talking about the coastal area, what Kubal sir explained, and in that respect, the total coast area and backwater or river mouth and lagoons and all those areas which are out of high tide line and actual sea, but we have to protect all that as a part of protecting coastal areas. So with that respect, we do have a specified environmental legislation. Under the Environment Protection Act, we do have CRZ notification. So in 1991, we had a CRZ notification, and up till now, almost 20 times it got amended. Every time it was getting relaxed, and the latest amendment is 2019, and the name of previously it came in 1991, then it was amended to the name of 2011, and yet that act itself is in force. In 1998, it was ordered to have an CZMP, Coastal Zone Management Plan, so which is almost now ready in 2019. Even if you will look for the Mumbai's Coastal Zone Management Plans, it is very well available. And these coastal CZMP or Coastal Zone Management Authority, which is specially meant to regulate the activities in the coastal area. So here I would like to give a little bit of background about CRZ notification. So we do have different categories of CRZ, CRZ1 area, CRZ2 2, CRZ 3, CRZ 4 areas, and those are categorized under CRZ notification. So this is overall a background for who are not aware about much of CRZ notification. So CRZ after 2011, CRZ1 notification got further. CRZ1 area became CRZ1A and B, and even CRZ3 got further. So it's developing, but overall it's getting relaxed, whereas CRZ1 is the area which is most critical area where coral reefs or sand dunes are there, and CRZ1A is all those areas in which 3-4 activities are let down, which if those activities need to be carried out, then the procedure is let down, or where the CRZ1B, which is an intertidal region in which 18 activities are listed. So any project of that need to be carried out, then the as we say, there are several permissions are required, but when it is coming under CRZ area, then it may be CRZ 1, 2, 3, 4. Then there are certain 11 activities which are not permissible, and if somebody has to carry out under any of permissible activity, then it has to follow certain procedure, like we are saying EIA it comes under EIA notification, that is environment impact assessment notification. Then feasibility study need to be carried out. If it's coming under public hearing, that need to be carried out. It need to take CZMP permission. So under CRZ. So this is as far as the CRZ1 is concerned. So CRZ1 is for the critical areas. CRZ2 is developed areas coming under municipal limits. Under that also they have listed some 6 activities. Again, if those permissible activities, they need to follow the procedure, prescribed procedure under it. Let down. If CRZ3, again CRZ3A and CRZ3B, which is for the rural areas. So CRZA is mainly for A and B category. CRZ3 comes where the rural areas are there and where the population is more than 2,161. If it is more than that, then it is CRZA, and if it is less than the population of the 1,000 square kilometer, the 1,000 square kilometer, if the population is less than 261, that's a magic number is given, then it is coming under CRZB. And so they have classified it, and so when the cases arises in this case, then it's being challenged. Then it's saying about salinity. So talks about salinity also. So this is about the CRZ3. Then CRZ4, which is again low tide line. So it is water side CRZ4A up to 12 nautical miles, which Hule sir said that up to 12 nautical mile, it's the jurisdiction of the state government. Then 12 to 35, it is of the coastal guard, which is coming at. So everything that is defined under island protection zone notification. Sorry, it is defined under Maritime Act. So all those areas. So as far as the CRZ is concerned, then again when it is CRZ4 is low tide line to it is seaward side. So up till now, CRZ 1, 2, 3, all the restrictions and activities were from high tide line to or intertidal or high tide line to landward side, whereas the CRZ 4 is from the low tide line to water side, and then there the salinity is counted. So CRZ 4A is water side, and B is it is on the landward side for the what we say mouth of the river or the estuaries or the backwaters, where it is landward side, not inside the sea, then those are CRZ 4B. And there also the salinity is being, it is on the permission is given on the basis of salinity, that it whether it is less than 5 parts of 1000 ppt. Lots of technicalities are involved, and so when we talk of, as Hule sir was explaining the issues, that there is a lack of implementation. So it is very important that we a man understand the laws, what is illegal, make complaints about it. There is judicial provisions to file cases or complaints, and in that respect, I would like to point out that when we say that it is illegal and nobody is taking the action, so it's a sad situation in the environmental legislation that the political will or the administration, it is some malpractices, or it is not encouraging to take suo motu action by them. So the public participation is very much involved into it. People need to take action. People need to repeatedly write to the authorities. If authorities are not taking the action, then the people can move the criminal courts, or public participation NGOs wise can file the cases, and the action can be taken. I know it's sometimes when they have to stay over there, they are not interested in taking action. What you call pani mein reh ke magarmachh se bear, or with whomever you are taking action, or could be with the influential people or so. But when we talk of environment protection, we need to have a lot of public awareness. People need to come ahead and take the action. Be bold. There are several cases, several important cases. So it's not totally discouraging thing. I would like to point out in one of the Supreme Court order, based on the NIRI report, Dahanu Development Authority was constituted, and then they were looking after minutely to protect the fragile, ecologically fragile area of the Dahanu and nearby area. Or even S. Jagannath, even Hule sir explained that internationally it is encouraged for proper fishing, or where the salinity increases, that kind of shrimp culture was banned by the one of the S. Jagannath case laws. So even there are important landmark case laws. I would like to point out, we have discussing about the construction of jetties or construction of coastal roads. So as far as we have filed on behalf of Dr. Rashmi Mayur, Worli Bandra Sea Link project, rampant reclamation was on at Bandra. We were having a hue and cry of encroachment into Dadar Chowpatty. So by this time, we have lost the Dadar Chowpatty, and now it is not recoverable. So, but we filed the case, we pointed out some of the restrictions on technical restrictions on reclamation was put up, but this is the area we shouldn't give up. Now also we know about Varli Kolivada Nakwa Matsya Vyavasaya Sahakari Society and 4 other NGOs and even a group of architects. Their all matter is clubbed, and it is they are challenging now the reclamation at Varli, which is under a coastal road. So that matter recently, just last month, we got the order that now the reclamation about that is called for and the project is stalled. So it's not the case that nothing can happen. There is a public hearing one need to take. We need to argue. I have even appeared in the matter relating to Nandgaon Port, where the main objection was for the public hearing. People were opposing it, but the project went ahead on the basis of several scientific studies and reports attached to it. And in the matter in which I was personally appearing in the Nandgaon Port, so where the court sanctioned some 50 crores of corporate social responsibility for it, and then but against the will of the local fisher folks, the matter went ahead. So even there are several matters relating to development of resorts like Capico Kerala Resort, where the development was rejected, or Indian Council for Goa Foundation matter, where the development was rejected, or Indian Council for Environment Legal Action 1996, which allowed to detailing and further framework of the CRZ law. Even Vanashakti has filed several cases. It has filed about the Ulhas River case, in which the MIDC areas are leaving, which Kubal sir explained that lots of siltation and pollution is causing. So in that, around 10 crore of penalties being enforced, and special working committee is being enforced. So there is a requirement of legal awareness amongst the people. People need to take an active, proactive role, which is being basically 42nd Amendment in 1976, which laid down every citizen's fundamental duty to protect the environment. That need to come into picture, and the lethargy about not being active, or the people need to file a complaints, file RTI, any pollution or air, participate into public hearings, study the reports made available before public hearing. So this kind of lots of work a common citizen need to leave the lethargy and take proactive role to protect the environment. I think that is the solution for the environment protection. There are a number of laws, there are a number of cases which are encouraging, but practically for enforcing them, citizens' duty and making the authorities to function with whatever the prescribed duties laid down under the Act need to be carried out. I think with this, I think the assigned time for me, I give explanation for the judicial provision and duties of the citizens. Otherwise, whatever the provisions made to protect the environment will remain on paper, and we need to enforce it.
So thank you, Dr. Sadhna. I think you have given us a fairly good idea that, and also Mr. Hule, in continuation of what he said, is that there is a good amount of legal framework for protection of the environment. However, what is probably not happening is that people are not using the right tools maybe to approach or the right tools to fight against, or there is not enough awareness even among the government officials. And of course, there are other things such as corruption, etc., which is also hindering. But what your message is that people should use every possible step that they can to oppose against these unenvironmental projects that are coming up and raise their voice. Only then can things happen. I will, since I know we have questions, we are running out of time, but we have our next speaker, Professor Bhushan Boyer. Up till now, I think mainly we have been talking about the Konkan down south of Mumbai. We will now go slightly north to Palghar, from where Professor Bhushan Boyer is joining us. And we would like him to talk about the impact of climate change on ocean and fisheries. Maybe a little bit, he will show us some pictures, and specifically he will be talking about infrastructure projects which are planned in Palghar area and their impact on fisheries and marine ecosystems, and also the fisher folk community. Professor Boyer.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Good evening, everyone. So, first of all, when we talk about the climate change, first of all, we should think about the life from where it was originated. Basically, we all know that life all originated from the oceans, right? And even the oxygen what we are breathing right now, the 75% of oxygen, that all oxygen comes from the ocean. There is a human tendency to neglect the small things. The phytoplanktons or micro plants which are there in the water, which are there in the ocean water, they are creating a 75% of the oxygen over the earth, and we are still neglecting that. And when all the marine pollutions are being happening, that marine pollution is actually killing those microplants. So we are unaware about that. And recently there was a snowfall in the Satara. There was a high floods in the monsoon in the Kolhapur, Sangli, Satara, Pune, etc. And it was everywhere. And when we say Earth, we should talk about we should not talk about the Earth. Actually, it's a blue planet. More than 75% of the Earth is comprising of the water. Okay, so and all these climates of the Earth are being governed by the oceans, or we oceanographers say oceans are the climate making factory of the Earth. And when anything wrong happens to the ocean, it can create a havoc over the Earth, and that is what we are facing right now. So I talk about the phytoplanktons, right, which created the 75% of oxygen. When the temperature rises, actually, since so long time, the temperature of the Earth was stable, and right now, just within this last 50 years, we are emitting a lot of amount of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. As a result, the average temperature of the Earth is rising, and as a result of that, the temperatures of the oceans are also getting changed. As a result, the algae which was there in the ocean, that is also being impacted, and that algae is unable to produce the oxygen, or that algae is unable to produce algae is unable to do its functions in the high temperatures. And this phytoplanktons, or this small microalgae, is also food for the marine animals. So when the temperature rises and when the temperatures are rising, there are some bad algae which are also there, which increase in the ocean. Recently, we have seen that there are in the several areas there was a red tide, or certain creeks changed the color, or certain marine areas changed the color in the reddish manner. So when that red tide happens, it indicates that there is a lot of red algae is growing, and that is because of increasing temperatures. So when this red algae grows, it does not account for food for the marine animals. Instead, it poses a threat to this marine fishes because it creates a toxic chemical in the oceans. So along with the rising temperatures, ocean lose the ability to absorb the oxygen. Actually, there is also a cycling of the water also gets affected. So we all are living on the tropic, right? Our India is on the tropic. So when this tropic water or when this tropical water, all the oceans are connected with each other, right? So when the temperatures are on the rise, this in the olden days, all the water from India used to flow from the Pacific Ocean and rest of the ocean, then it used to reach to the both the polar caps of the Earth. And when that used to happen, as the water reaches to the high altitude of Arctic region, that used to get that tend to get colder in the Arctic region, and that colder water used to sink down. And when that colder water used to sink down from upper surface to the lower surface, it also used to mix the oxygen, because this is the surface of the ocean, and when the air flows from the surface, all the oxygen get mixed in the surface. And when that when this tropical water move towards the Arctic region, the water gets cool and it gets it becomes denser, and then that increased density of the water will take that water will be sink down. As a result, this there was a cycling was happening, like oxygen was getting mixed to the deepest level of the oceans. And then when this waters actually this Gulf, there is a Gulf Stream which carries all these currents from the different countries, and it actually completes one complete cycle in the 1 year. So when that Gulf Stream reaches and when that Gulf Stream takes that that polar caps water, and when it reaches to the tropical region, so at that time monsoon comes. So here how the monsoon cycle used to happen. But right now what is happening, that since the temperatures have been rising, this conveyor belt of the ocean is getting disturbed. And when that when this tropical water used to reach when this tropical water nowadays reaches to the polar regions, so there also it is not able to cool down, because in the polar regions also there is a high temperature. As a result, no mixing of the ocean happens in the no mixing of the oxygen happens in the ocean. As a result, there are many oxygen depleted zones are being formed into the ocean, deep sea areas. And when this happens, all the fishes try to come out from the deep sea, and they try to maintain themselves in the coastal areas. Right now, fishing community has been told that since we are being, the government is saying that since we are doing ports and we are doing all the infrastructure projects, we will give you deep sea fishing boats, and you please go and do deep sea fishing. But my fishermen people, they do not know that recently, due to this cyclic oxygen cycling in the ocean has been affected. As a result, all the fishes are actually fleeing from the deep sea, and they are moving towards the shallower regions, or they are moving to the continental shelf of the oceans. And our people go for fishing in the deep sea. So this is what is happening. And why that fishes come to the shallower region, because this shallower region or this coastal region, that is 12 nautical mile region. So that 12 nautical mile region has several rivers are there, several creeks are there, which actually bring the nutrients from the rivers and from the creeks, and that nutrients are been thrown into the ocean in the coastal region. So when that nutrients get when the ocean gets this nutrients, phytoplanktons grow up, and when the phytoplanktons grow up, oxygenation happens. Then it also makes the food for the fishes, and this is how the fishery is been built. And what our people are doing, we are leaving the productive continental shelf, and we are trying to go deep inside. And when when this all cycles are being affected, our Indian meteorology says that recently the oceans, the west coast is getting warmer than the east coast. That is creating a Indian Ocean dipole, and this Indian Ocean dipole phenomena is creating the cyclones. Recently, as per IMD report, Indian Meteorology Department says that within the last 5 years, the cyclones have been intensified to 35%. And they are saying that more and more cyclones will be intensified in the future if the temperature rise goes on continuously like this. So this is how the cyclones are also also affecting the fishermen's. They are also affecting the other communities as well, those who are living in the coastal areas. And there are several developmental projects which government is dumping right now on the coastal areas. I will bring you notice that there are several countries like Norway, China, and rest of the countries like that. They are trying to build a massive wall to protect themselves from the flooding, which is going to be happen in the future within just 5-10 years, because the temperature rise is continuing and it is depleting the polar ice, and that is why there is a rise in sea levels. So it is estimated that more than 2 feet of sea level is to be projected in for the next 3 decades. So within the 3 decades, the sea level is rise is about to by 2 feet. And what our government is thinking, we are planning all the projects on the very old climate modeling. So we are planning all these projects based on, I would say, 50 years old climate modeling, and based on that, millions and millions of dollars they are wasting up in the projects like Nana Refinery is there. Then we do have Jaitapur project is there. Then we do have Vadhavan Port is there. Then bullet train and rest of the projects. So all the projects are coming all the way in the CRZ areas, and the government and our people are and even our scientists, they are actually neglecting the climate change, and they are straight away trying to dump this all. And when this is going to happen, where these people will go, specifically I'm going to talk about the Vadhavan especially. So before going to the Vadhavan, I will talk first about how the fishing happens in our district. Almost Palghar district has more than 2,000 fishing vessels, and these 2,000 fishing vessels, most of them are traditional fisher folks, which do not go for fishing in the breeding season of the fishes. Okay, and they rely on their ancestral techniques. Instead of using the fish finders, they go to their GPS points, which are their ancestral, which have been told by their ancestors, and they go there and there on that areas, and they do trial and error fishing. So this is kind of a fishing our people do. And when I was a kid 30 years back, there was a plenty of fishes, or there was a plenty of fish landing used to happen at Satpatti Fish Landing Center. And recently, what is happening that when I was growing, along with me, Boisar MIDC was also growing. And when this Boisar MIDC project grew up, right now this Boisar MIDC has more than 2,000 industries. Out of that, there are several more than 500 red listed category industries. So what is happening there, that when these industries were rising, they did not implemented their water effluent treatment plants. So what is happening right now? They has only 75 MLD water treatment plant, and what they are doing, they are dumping more than 150 MLD water or sewage or chemical effluents in the sea every day. And that 75 MLD treatment plant is just for it is just for a dummy. So it does nothing, and that plant also emits a lot of amount of effluents to the sea. And right now they are dumping all these chemicals to the ocean. So what is happening there? So recently we had filed a case. We means our Akhil Bharatiya Mahila Samaj NGO had filed this case, and I have helped them with the scientific documents. So during that, we collected that these chemicals are being dumped in the Nawapur region, Nawapur Dandi Creek, and all that creek is being severely polluted. Then Satpati Murbe Creek is also getting severely polluted. So as I earlier said, that creeks are a major source of nutrients for the ocean. And what happens if you destroy the creeks? You are destroying the ocean. You are destroying the production in the ocean. This is what is happening in our area. So the areas like Boisar, the creeks which are there in the Boisar, Satpati, and Palghar, these are getting severely affected due to the industrial effluents. And when all this was happening, when we filed the case, we collected a data like we collected data from PHC center based at Nawapur. They are saying that every day they do have a more than every month they do have more than 200 skin and lung disease patients are coming to their PHC center. This is what they said. And we asked for the data for the cancer, but they hid the data. They did not give it to us. They said that this data we don't have because the patients usually go to Mumbai. But they try to hide this. So this was happening that every month these people are suffering from all these problems. And if you visit to these creeks, you will not even able to breathe properly. Within the last lockdown, I have been there for collecting the water samples. And I have been on the boat. Actually, when I get down from the boat, I was feeling vomiting, like I was not able to breathe properly. So in that area, the people are living. And if that thing is happening to the air, you just imagine what is happening to the ocean and what will be happening to the fishes. In the last lockdown, I observed that when these all industries were shut down, the severely polluted creeks like Nawapur Murbe and Satpati Murbe creeks, they did not had any sort of fish seeds, but I saw many seeds, fish seeds were growing up. And as soon as the lockdown was over, within the 2 days, when all the effluent started going up into the creeks, I observed that there was plenty of fishes were died, and I went there and I took some samples and I applied the method of line transact, and I got to know that there were more than 350,000 fishes were died during that one day. So this is what happened within just a 1 day, and you just imagine this kind of effluents are being dumped every day. And right now, let us talk about the Dahanu, where this development project is coming, part 1 project. Okay, so all the southern creek of the Palghar area are being polluted, and the rest of the area, for example, Dahanu, it was since it was designated as eco-fragile zone, and Dahanu had a independent environment protection authority, that is DTEPA, Dahanu Taluka Environment Protection Authority, and Justice Chandrasekhar Dharmadhikari was the chairman of that of this authority, and this authority effectively protected the Dahanu from all this kind of nonsense, and they protected it for more than 20 years. And recently, when the government again tried to build a port in 2017, Justice Dharmadhikari was there, and even I was present for that hearing. So Justice Dharmadhikari straight away said that what you people are doing, why you are you above the law? Why are you why are you conducting such kind of surveys instead of coming to us? Because government was supposed to go to Justice Dharmadhikari first, since it had a powers of Supreme Court. But government did not approach to the DTPA, and they straight away started conducting the surveys. And then Justice Dharmadhikari said that you should not go for any sort of surveys, because I know that the Supreme Court will not give you any other order than me. So you please stop all this nonsense and maintain the status quo. But after this judgment, when Justice Dharmadhikari passed away, and within just 6 months, government again declared that Dahanu notification says that no red listed industry can come in Dhanu. And what the central government did, central government just amended the list of red listed industries and they amended that port is not an industry, it is an infrastructure. On that judicial or I will just say that legal aspect, they are right now trying to build a port again to this Wadhwan area. And when I talk about the Dhanu, and when I talk about the southern area of Palghar, I have already said that all the creeks are severely polluted. As a result, no fish seed is going to the ocean with these creeks. But right now, the only productive area is remaining, that is Dhanu. And if they develop this Dhanu, or if they develop this Wadhwan port, I'm sure that all 2,000 fishing vessels will not go for fishing anymore, because this Wadhwan is acting as a breeding ground for the fishes. Because government is saying that Wadhwan is having more than 20 meters of draft or more than 20 meters of depth. That's why largest vessel can reach to this area, and that's why they are trying to build a port there. But if you check that this Wadhwan also has the depth, as well as it has very close creek, that is Dhanu Creek. So when this Dhanu Creek bring all the nutrients to this area, it makes an excellent breeding ground for the goldfish, or we called it as a grouper fish. So in goldfish, if you look the breeding cycle of the goldfish, you will notice that when they are born to a large depth like 10 meters to 20 meters. They are born only in that depths. And when they grow when they grow adult after 2 to 3 years, they all show up together to the same place where they were born, like turtles. And they come all the way to this Wadhwan area, and this creek, Dhanu Creek, brings the nutrients. And this Wadhwan, if you look at the coast of the Wadhwan, you will notice that it is having more than 2 kilometers of intertidal area, rocky patch. And that rocky patch grows a lot of marine algae. And since there are a lot of marine algae are growing up on this rocky patch, there are a lot of crustaceans like crabs, like shells, and other creatures are being growing up on that area. And that all other creatures are creating an ecosystem. They are creating a food for the other fishes like gold. So this goldfish specifically, they require high depth only, and they cannot go deep into this into ocean for the nesting. Because if you see that, because if they go to deep areas or deep ocean, there will not be a milder or there will be a pure saline water. And for breeding, they require slightly saline water, or the saline water somewhere around 15 to 25 ppt salinity they require. And this salinity they get at a place where there is a creek closer to the coast, and depth more than 20 meters. Why do they need the depth? Because God have designed, or nature have designed them to live in the depths. Actually, these goldfishes, these are fishes which are demersal, or they are living into the deep sea. Each fish is designed to live in the particular level of the ocean. Certain fishes, they float in the upper 5 meters of the ocean. Certain fishes may shoal in the more than 5 meters to 6 meters of depth, like that. And all that design is happening because of swim bladder, which is there fitted inside the fish. So this swim bladder, if the pelagic or the fish living on the surface, if that fish try to go in the deep sea, it will not survive there. Because as long as this fish try to go deep sea, the water pressure will build up on its body, and that water pressure will burst its air bladder, and it will get die. So this air bladder is designing everything. And when these deep sea fishes, they nest, they try to find out a depth which is very very good for their young ones. So if the goldfish go and try to do nesting in the 5 meters of depth in the ocean, their eggs will never survive, because as soon as they will come out of the as soon as they will come out of the eggs, their air bladders will swell up, because there is not much pressure on their bodies. So that's why they require this depth. And even the government or even the industrialist or the ports, they also require the same depth for getting the vessels. So this is how it is creating a tussle between the biodiversity and the development. And the government says that we are going to create more than 2,000 jobs in the port. But if we look the jobs which are being created by the fishing industry, you will just be astonished. Like, for example, there are more than 2,000 fishing vessels, and each fishing vessel give direct employment to more than 50 people. So if you calculate this, you will the amount might go to somewhere around 1 to 2 lakhs. So 1 to 2 lakh people, and the people who are not much educated, who are skilled in the fisheries, but if you take them out from the fisheries, they will do nothing. They will be unskilled laborer if you take them out. And when this all development is happening, the government is not trying to check with the climate change. I have already said the sea level rise is coming up. So I'll just ask you a favor to please share the photos which I have shared with you. We will just see a biodiversity which is there at Walban.
Yes, I think that we will request Sneha to quickly show the pictures, because I think we're also running out of time. We're supposed to close at 6:30. So let's, Sneha, can you quickly just run through the pictures maybe? And then I think I would like to take the questions.
Yes.
So this is the spider crab, which you will not see anywhere in the other areas of Palghar. Next. This is again a spider crab, and you will see that there are jelly-like structures. These are actually eggs of different varieties of shells. So these are all the shells of these are all the eggs of shells. Next slide. So this is a porcelain crab, which is very tiny, actually just just 2 to 3 millimeters. Next. And these are soft corals. You will not get anywhere. And this site is very similar to the Narara Wildlife Sanctuary, which is there in the Gujarat. See what is happening. That Gujarat is having such kind of biodiversity where they are actually building wildlife sanctuaries. And what we are doing, we are destroying our wildlife sanctuaries in the name of port, because nobody knows that this biodiversity exists there. Next. So this is another variety of zoanthid or soft coral. Next. This is also another variety of soft coral. Next. So these are the conches. So if you visit to this side, you will get such kind of a large shells to that area. And that's why our ancestors tell it as a Shankhodar. So Shankha means shell and Udar means what do I say? Udar means पेट, और मम्मी का पेट रहता है जिसके अंदर बच्चा रहता है. So kind of that. Next slide. So this is a carpet anemone. Next. These are the people who are actually gathered together for bhajan. And this is also a sacred place for us. It is believed that Lord Rama have offered last offering to his father to this place, and the current government is trying to destroy this place. So these people gathered together for a bhajan, so that please give God give them a good for example. Next slide. So this picture will show you a biodiversity. See what different kind of zoanthids are there. Blue is there, so that is Sansibarius. Then this yellow is Pylithua mutuki. Then this green is also another variety of Sansibarius soft coral. So this just one picture will show you how and what biodiversity is there. if you reach to this spot, and if you try to put a leg, if you try to put a step, your every step will be fallen on the such kind of creatures only. So that all creatures are going to be submerged under the rocks. Next. See, now this image you will see, this is actually a Form 21, which has been prepared by the one of the industry for building the port. And what they are doing, that here they are saying that any area protected by law. So they are saying yes, it's protected by the law. That this particular area is protected by the law, and it is. They have said they have designed the separate project. They're saying that Dahanu thermal power is somewhere around 1.4 kilometers within the aerial distance. And when they are talking about the atomic power station, they are saying that atomic power station is present in the 12-kilometer radius. But at the if you go to this plot, you will notice that atomic power station and this Vadhvan, there is only 6.5 kilometers distance is there. So they are trying to hide the information, and instead of saying 6.5 kilometers, they are saying that it is 12 kilometer. It is in the 12-kilometer radius. So this is creating a big mistake. And next slide, I will show you. So if you see this is a this is future flood maps created by the Climate Central. And if you see these flood maps, just see this Tarapur atomic power station and all the red areas which is there, that is very that red area is supposed to be submerged underwater by 2050. So within just 30 years, this area is supposed to be gone underwater, and that marine water is going to reach to the Tarapur atomic power station. That is very and next picture. Next.
This was the last one I had.
Oh shit.
Just a moment.
Anyways, shit. Sadly, I forgot to give you that picture, because it shows that this Tarapur atomic power station is also aligned to this Vadhvan area. So if you go north of this in the straight line, there is similar land projected inside the sea, and there exists a Vadhvan. And to this place, within just and when they are going to try, they are going to build a Vadhvan port. They are going to reclaim the land from the ocean, and they are going to dump more than 5,000 hectares of debris. Sorry, they are going to reclaim the 5,000 hectares of land in the ocean, and they are going to build. They are going to construct a 12 kilometers of breakwater, and that is very close to what atomic power station. Within just 6 kilometers of aerial distance, you are creating such kind of things. So this Vadhvan is like Vadhvan is here. Vadhvan is here. Tarapur atomic power station is here. Vadhvan is here, and this is our C-shaped ocean, and this is the beach. And from this place to this place, this is at this Vadhvan point, they are going to reclaim the 5,000 hectares of land, and from here they are going to put a 12 kilometers of breakwater. And our fisherman says that there is a strong current to these areas. So the marine current, for example, if you do not tow your boat, or if you do not anchor your boat, that boat goes to more than 12 kilometers within just 1 hour. And to this force, they are putting this 12 kilometers of breakwater. What will happen to this atomic power station when there is no any sort of reclamation? There also within the 30 years that there is a severe flooding going to happen to this atomic power station. And to very close of this side, you are putting more than 5,000 hectares of debris. And again, this is just a primary project they are showing up. By putting the 5,000 hectares of, by reclaiming the 5,000 hectares, they are saying they are going to create a 4-platform jetty. and they are supposed to build 35 platforms. So for building up the 4 platform, they require 5,000 hectares of reclamation. Just imagine if they build 35 jetties, what reclamation they will require, and what it will create a problem. So it's a never-ending story. Actually, it's very big and very vast. But since I have very small time, I was not able to cover everything.
I think you have at least convinced everybody who is participating here today that we don't require the port. So it was a very detailed explanation that you have given, and especially those pictures also helped us. But since we had promised the program to get over by 6:30, and we have given your contact details and everybody's contact details on the chat box, and we'll also display it for those who want to know. But meanwhile, let me take at least a few questions that have come, and I will start with the very first question that came. I think Mr. Avinash Kubal is the right person to answer this question. This is by Dr. Deepali Hadkar. I hope she's still on the program. It says that during storm Nisarga, which happened recently, the Suru forest on Nagao beach was badly wiped out. Can you suggest how we can replace this loss? Nagao beach is 10 kilometers south of Alibag. What initiative should we start to replace the trees which were destroyed?
These coastal plantations were raised about some 25 years before, all along the Indian subcontinent. You can say it was started right from Gujarat, Maharashtra, Karnataka, Kerala, everywhere. Most of the places the casuarina was planted, and this plantation was taken up beyond the high tide line. So you can't have the mangrove vegetation there. So, and this was a terrestrial plantation. Jameen pe jo ped lagaye jate wo. The idea at that time was because coastal areas are also having a lot of population, and they do require a lot of firewood. So these kind of plantations were raised. And the idea was, since the casuarina is a fast growing tree, which completes its age within 6 years. So there was an idea that 6-year rotation would be fixed. Every year, certain number of trees would be harvested and they would be used as a source of material. But unfortunately, what was seen is like this plan was later on not followed, and only plantations remained in the ground. Now, all these plantations, when they are getting damaged, I think it's a high time that we replace them. We plant suitable species on these areas, because as we can see that wherever the plantation got damaged, the other damage was slightly less, because the wind activity was stopped, or wind activity was not able to damage the civil infrastructure. It's a high time that we plant new plantations in this area, and it's very simple, very easy to grow plantations in the coastal areas, because all the required factors like the moisture and the soil fertility is available. I think they just need we just need people's initiative for taking up this plantation, and we can do that. I would very much recommend to plant trees there.
So are you saying that they should not plant casuarina trees and instead have other varieties?
Casuarina being a fast growing, of course, it's a exotic. That is what many people are opposing it to. But it's one of the fastest growing tree which grows very fast on the coastal area. But alternate to that, there are a lot of Indian trees or Indian subcontinental trees also which can be planted. So it depends on the local community. They have to decide whether they would like to go for the casuarina, or they would like to go for alternate Indian species.
I think Professor Boyer wants to say something.
Yes, there are problems like flooding in the rainy season, and if you want to protect the flooding in the sand, on the sand dunes, or where the casuarina plantations are there, I have seen that wherever there is a kevda plantation, or what we say pandanus tree, so that pandanus tree is excellent soil binder, and it also create houses for many of the bird species. So it also protect the flooding, and if you plant the pandanus tree, it is also a good soil binder. And I have seen that wherever there are pandanus trees on the coastal areas, if you see towards the landward side, grasses grow large in the large amount just after the pandanus tree, and it creates a filter in the rainy season, and this allows the water to be go off, and sand is stayed there. So instead of planting anything, I actually these pandanus trees were naturally there. So I guess we should again replace them wherever it's possible.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Professor Boyle. I'll take the next question here, which is specifically maybe Mr. Hule can answer this. Is about the Oceanarium project by Sanjana M. She is asking if is this project shelved? If yes, why so? Will it be taken up in the future? Oceanarium project in Sindhudurg.
I will explain that. See, this project actually it is called as Marine Park in Malvan. Now they are reviewing the project, and government team has come there. After 6 months, they will give report to the government, and then government will finalize this project. Due to Corona, this analysis has been stopped.
Okay.
So after monsoon, the team will give report to the government of Maharashtra.
Okay. Great. Thank you. I think I'll take the next question, which actually Mr. Pradeep Patade is also here, and he has mentioned one important information. If you see any illegal activity happening on mangroves or coastal areas, that is intertidal zone, you can dial 1926. That is a Hello Forest Department. Thank you, Mr. Patade, for that information. And let me check. There is also one question. I think it has come from Facebook. Mr. Gangne has asked, there is a number of local self-government institutions in Maharashtra which burn their garbage in the city and on the dumping ground. What can we do as citizens or NGO? Would Sadhana, Dr. Sadhana, be able to take this question? I think you are on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. In such cases, we need to make a complaint to the subsequent authorities who are taking the, if it's relating to dumping ground, the municipal authorities are taking care of, they are responsible authorities, and to carry out all that. And MPCB, Pollution Control Board, is the authority who are monitoring and who can give direction for the proper implementation. So in such case, we need to take note everything, click a photograph and make a complaint to the concerned municipal office, and a copy to it to the MPCB and Environment Department also. And even I would suggest as only with the legal procedure, even you may call media, involve media into it, and if do the follow-up about what the action is being carried out, even inform the NGOs. So these all different, and after making complaint, nothing took place, we can proceed with the legal action also.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Sadhana. I think that there are questions here, but since again we have extended up to more than half an hour of our program, I will sort of wind it up now. I think we had a very, very interesting talk from all of the speakers. I know we gave very little time for all the amount of subject that you had to cover, but I do hope that everybody who wants to take action or wants to do something further can get in touch with the speakers. I will request Naida to please display the contact details of all the speakers, and so that you can get in touch with them, and also please reply on the feedback form. But I think that just to summarize, first of all, Mr. Avinash Kubal gave us a fantastic overview of all the developmental projects and their impacts, as well as the impact of climate change in the Indian coastline, specifically Konkan. Mr. Hule, very with the good pictures, visuals, he explained to us about what is happening in Konkan, especially the illegal fishing related to pursue net, and why the law is not being very effective in its implementation. But he has also suggested some good things like the positive aspects like eco-labeling, and also he had suggested, but probably did not have the time to show, but CNG-based boats and so on. So those can be also taken up. Dr. Sadhana has clearly guided us about the law and the legislation that exists. There is clearly a very good framework to protect the environment, but as she said, public and people need to take action. They need to be vigilant and together do something when they see something wrong going on with the environment, and not just sit and be lethargic about it and think that somebody else is going to take action. It's not going to happen like that. And finally, Professor Bhoer from Palghar has given us a wealth of information. In fact, a very good comparison on what we call as development, and what, on the other hand, what we have, which is the fisher folk community. And I think their lives are equally important as much as the biodiversity that we are talking about, that we are trying to save. So it is not just the the beautiful example that he gave of this fish versus the depth that they require and the depth that the Vadhavan port requires. It's an excellent example. And I think that all the people in the government should be made aware of this very simple facts. And also the numbers that he pointed out about, the local communities. And always, I still remember that when we, with Dr. Sadhana Mahashabde, and I was representing Dr. Rashmi Mayur at that time, we filed a petition, a public interest litigation against the Bandra-Worli Sea Link. We were brushed aside by the court, and it was said that our case was not in the public interest. And there were a lot of fisher folk community with us who had filed the petition, and so their lives were not considered important. So this is not at all the case. We have a huge number of fisher folk who are and who are providing us not just the as I said in the beginning, it's also the food security, it's the nutritional security that they provide, and they are very careful in the way they are traditionally fishing so far, and unlike the the new kind of fishing that has come up. So we got a fantastic overview of all these topics, and nothing better to discuss on when we are observing an International Earth Day. Let's hope that these all will be starting points for us to take further, and we'll all be doing something in this direction. Thank you, everyone, and I will hand over to Prajakta.
Thank you, Dr. Roshni. I would like to thank all our panelists for throwing light on the current issues with respect to urban development and marine ecology. The contact details of our panelists have been shared on the screen. Please feel free to contact them for further information. Our next webinars have already been planned and will be announced soon on our social media pages. We would like to thank all who are a part of our virtual family on Instagram and Facebook and are making us stronger with your support. If you're not yet a part, do follow our Instagram and Facebook page for further updates. The link to join our pages have been posted in the chat window. Also, subscribe to our YouTube page and do check our past webinars. We have covered more than 18 webinars till now on varied topics. We would also be soon announcing our short certificate courses and training modules. So stay tuned. Thank you all for joining today. Take care and stay safe. Bye.